I want to look ahead next 3 years, and I just want to flat out call my shot on the top 15 programs in college football. How do we define a program? Well, around Pate State, we define a program as a rolling multi-year blend of your on-field record, so your results, your recruiting, and your portaling, aka talent acquisition. How good are you at getting good players? How good do you evaluate them? How good do you get them? How good do you develop them? We care about your resources. Don't be broke. No poverty programs in our top 15. And we care about synergy and culture. When we cut your program open, what is it made of? What's the DNA in there? And it's an insane challenge because, as you will see in just a second, or earlier today, I asked a lot of you to do this for yourselves. And as a lot of you found out, after you get past about number 5 or 6, it's not like you run out of programs. It's like you have a big jumbled mess of like 10 or 15 more of them, and you're saying, what order do I put these in? Well, you didn't have to complete the exercise, but I did because we had a show to do live tonight. So here we go. Top 15 programs in college football as I see it over the next 3 seasons when using a rolling multi-year blend of the factors that I talked about there. Georgia, next 3 years, #1 program in college football. Top staff in the country right now, led by, I would say, the top head coach in college football. They're 42-2 over the last 3 years. They're an elite recruiting program. They're also an elite development program, so you don't have to worry about what happens to the 4- and 5-star talent when it gets there. The potential will be maximized. A lot of them will end up filtering out through the portal, but that's only because there's an excess of talent already there. They've got elite resources. I fully believe in their quarterback room now and in the future, and they've got some of the best internal energy and also program synergy in all of college football. Slam dunk right now to me, Georgia over the next 3 years, #1 program in college football. Now it gets really fun because this kind of changed over the past, I'd say, a couple of months for maybe a lot of people. What's the #2 program in college football over the next 3 years? We know who it has been. Who will it be? I was just waiting on you to roll the lower column. That way I didn't have to repeat it. #2 program in college football over the next 3 years, it's Alabama. It's the same as we would have called it recently, only there was a coaching change there. So Nick Saban, a legend, hits the exit door. And then a lot of casuals say, no one wants to take over for a legend. Well, here's a little cheat sheet Meemaw gave me. If the legend leaves behind immaculate facilities and a top-notch infrastructure, take over for the legend, especially if you yourself are legit, which Kalen DeBoer is. So the program is top-notch. Recruiting over the past 3 years has been #1 on average in the country. They will be top 5, I think, now and moving forward because look at how they're acquiring talent already. That was the great unknown. And so if I look at Kalen DeBoer's Alabama and you're telling me, talent acquisition, even if it does drop off, is going to drop off minimally, I don't worry about them on game day. I don't worry about their culture. I don't worry about anything else. In fact, beyond talent acquisition, once you answer that question for me, you may be looking at one of the most high-level handoffs of the baton in the history of this sport from one icon to another guy whose best chapters of his career may be made in Tuscaloosa. So Alabama, #2 program in the country over the next 3 years for me. We're not going too far before we head up to Columbus, Ohio. I got Ohio State. Right now it's the #3 program in the country in the coming 3 seasons. I love their positioning because everything's elite up there. The resource pool is elite. They spare no expense, whether it be going and acquiring talent, whether it be being active in the portal when they need to be. Certainly the recruiting is an elite tier. The staff, I would say, is at an elite tier. Facilities, all that stuff. They got all those boxes checked. But here's the thing. They're as hungry as any program in America. So I get all that, which would normally border right up against complacency and getting fat and happy. And there's none of that. Because as folks will tell you, what if they won, Josh? What if they won? Well, they've won a lot of football games, but not the ones towards the end of the season. At least this staff hasn't. And so they're well positioned. They're like a rubber band pulled all the way back and snap. Eventually it's going to snap. Eventually the dam's going to break there, and a lot of the have-nots will become haves, and a lot of the cannots will just disappear, and all of a sudden Ohio State wins them a title, and then you never know. They go on a little Georgia run, a little Bama run. If they don't, it won't be because they didn't have the pieces in place. Let me put it that way. So Ohio State, fully believe in them the next 3 years. They're right up there with the best in the country. Now, as we see conference realignment and conference expansion happen, we get to talk about a Big Ten program here, but one all the way out on the Pacific Ocean. I've got Oregon as the number 4 program positioned over the next 3 years in college football. It is very likely you're looking at the next superpower in college football. You know the brand. You know the duck on the motorcycle. You know the 50 million different uniform combos, courtesy of Kenny Farr, big-time fan of the program up there, friend of the program. What you don't know is Oregon perennial national championship contender. But that's what they are. Now and moving forward, that's what they are. The recruiting piece is in place. The talent acquisition piece with the portal as well is in place. They are becoming, scratch that, they are now the dominant team on the West Coast. It's a problem for anyone else out there, and it's kind of a sidebar, this side discussion when it comes to USC, old Pac-12 schools that are now in the Big Ten. Oregon, over the coming 3 years, will start to show you a lot of the benefits of recruiting like they do and bringing in guys out of the portal like they do. But also, if you were to go out there and you were to have toured the SEC and toured Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten, you would say energy out here feels just like it does down there. Wow, the 1 and 2 deeps on the lines of scrimmage look very similar to what I see over there and down there. Lanning's just built an SEC/upper-tier Big Ten program on the West Coast, and you may say, well, duh, they are a Big Ten program. Yeah, but if I would have told you 5 years ago Oregon's going to be in the Big Ten, the first thing you would have said is, man, they're really going to have to upgrade now. The physicality, the rugged wear and tear of that schedule is going to get them. They're going to get folks. They're as built or more appropriately built to withstand that than a lot of the teams that they're going to play. Lanning and his staff, by the way, just now coming into their own. Dan Lanning is a head coach, just now coming into his own. I'd be careful the kind of language I use to describe him because he is not yet what he will be. So we're talking about the next 3 years. I think the next 3 years will look really, really dominant for Oregon, and they'll be in the conversation every year. Hadn't gotten to Texas yet. Where's Texas? Well, they're number 5. I've got Texas as the number 5 program in college football over the next 3 years. They'll be there every year. So we're talking obviously about programs that don't have to build towards a season. They're not window programs. They're every year programs. They're reload programs. Texas recruiting, you see what they're doing. Portal, you have seen and will continue to see what they're doing. Resources, they take a back seat to no one there. Pedals fully down on the floorboard. They'll do whatever it takes to win. The resources being unmatched is only part of it because they've had resources for a long time. They needed to make proper hires. I think they did in Steve Sarkisian. I don't think very many people are questioning that anymore. But also the year-over-year backfilling of the staff. Pay attention to that with the new rules in the NCAA and the new guidelines for who is allowed to be on the field coaching and how fat you can make your staff. Texas is going to be one of the most well-positioned programs in America to benefit from that and not only build roster depth, they've already been doing that in recruiting. Building coaching roster depth is one of the more underrated aspects over the coming 3 years that a lot of the big boys, including Texas, will take advantage of. I'll tell you the next thing to watch for Texas, developing a killer instinct and developing a true dominant identity as a program. They're a step off of that right now. They're not what Georgia's been yet. They're not what Bama's been yet. They went into Bama last year and beat them and showed signs that they're evolving into that. That's got to be a 12-week thing and beyond. That's got to be an every day of the year thing. They're on the doorstep. That's the next thing to do for Texas, kick the door in. But right now, right there squarely in the mix with all the other big-time programs. Okay, and then, let me just turn that piece of paper over. I'm going to be so interested to see where you guys went with this. The number 6 program in college football over the next 3 years, to me, is Florida State. They are right there, knocking on the door at being one of the elite programs in America. 24-2 or 24-4 the last 4 years. Recruiting has gone from good to really good to great is the next step that I'm looking for. And the thing about it is, you don't have to ask about them. Should I believe in them? Do I have proof? If I'm a prospective player, do I have proof they can win? Yes, you've got it. It doesn't matter if the committee left them out of the playoff last year. You saw them play an undefeated regular season. So you saw them win the ACC. You saw all this. You've seen Mike Norvell. That's not in the future. That's the now. In the future is, do they start stacking seasons like that? I think it's very likely they do. I think it may be likely we haven't seen Florida State's best teams. Does that mean this year? Not necessarily. It does mean over the next 3 years, I think they'll fulfill on that. Are they going to be in the ACC? I have no clue. Wherever they are, I don't care if they're independent. I don't care if they're in the Big 12. wherever they are going to play about as high a level football, I think, under Mike Norvell as any program in America. And their defining signature moment for casual fans is still ahead. We saw what Mike Norvell did last year, and I think most anybody with a brain is sold on him. But there's a group of people who truly need to see you win a national championship. Or in the modern age, they need to see you win multiple playoff games before they believe you're legitimate. That's coming for Florida State, I believe. It'll be that moment in the mind of the casual fan that they've arrived. They've already arrived. I wouldn't put them number 6 over the next 3 years if I didn't think they've already arrived. So Florida State, as the ACC currently stands, Florida State to me projects as the number 1 program in that conference moving forward. I don't know what moving forward means, but that's where I've got them right now. Number 7, speaking of conferences, let's leave them all together. Oh, almost lost my piece of paper. The number 7 program in college football over the next 3 seasons is Notre Dame, to me. 9+ wins the last 5 years. So they've already been a high-level program. Top 12 class in recruiting, 4 straight years. So they've already been really good. They've been up there in talent acquisition. Future classes, I think, will elevate even further. I think they'll be more active in the portal than anyone thought the University of Notre Dame would be in the portal when it was first introduced to us. Al Golden and Mike Denbrock, as a coordinator pair, is about as good as it gets in college football. And so once Brian Kelly moved on and Marcus Freeman elevated to head coach, the big question was not only what will he be as a head coach, what kind of staff will he put together? Well, here we are a few years later. He's got an incredible staff. They're putting together really solid recruiting classes. They're evaluating and developing really well. They've got maximum flexibility as a program. They're independent, and everyone wants them. So you've got that going for you. Your resources, never a problem there. I think the brand of Notre Dame could evolve. You know what the brand is right now. The brand is they once were a big deal. The logo still means a lot. There's a lot of prestige and tradition, but there's an artificially built ceiling or a self-imposed ceiling on them. Notre Dame, good, not great. That's the ceiling. That's not the ceiling of Notre Dame. In the portal and NIL era especially, that's not the ceiling of Notre Dame. And if you're the number 7 program in the country over the next 3 years, that means you've done more than just contend. Just be happy to make the playoff. That means you've done damage in the playoff. I think Notre Dame could do that. This is the area to me, past number 7. This is the area where we get really, really creative because we can get really, really loose with our opinions. There's not a big gap. I'm telling you guys, between 8 and about 15, there's not a ton of room. So these are interchangeable. But when I put the graphic out later, you're going to see top 10 and not top 10. That's really what you're going to see. Well, here we go. Oklahoma's a top 10 program over the coming 3 years. I got them at number 8. I could be wrong. I could be low on them. There is a big misconception that because their over-under win total is not quite as high as Texas or Georgia, etc., coming into this first year for them in the SEC, that they're not a high-level program. They've been a top 10 program already. They've been a top 10 program in recruiting and portaling each of Brent Venables' first 3 seasons in Norman. There's a reason they just locked him up to a longer-term contract. They've got equity like you wouldn't believe built in that brand already. So benefit of the doubt already goes to Oklahoma. Maximum investment in the program. Jackson Arnold, I've got him at quarterback for at least 2 more years. Their win total's low this year because they play a tough schedule. Don't be fooled by that as it relates to what their program is now and moving forward. Energy, check. Culture, check. Intangibles, check. That is Oklahoma football. They've also shown the ability to win big portal battles, like Dom Williams, for example. LSU desperately needed that guy. Frankly, a lot of teams desperately needed help on the defensive line. Oklahoma, when they needed to swing the biggest hammer, they swung it. And in recruiting, they've been swinging it. And on the field, they won double-digit games last year. So in the coming 3 seasons, they could do some very special things in Norman. Number 9 was, I think, one of the hardest ones to do. I had 2 of them that I struggled mightily to place. Number 9 program over the next 3 years for me is Michigan. Michigan just won a national championship, and it's a very, not unprecedented, but borderline unprecedented situation because you have maximum turnover. You got a head coach leave, you got the whole staff leave except for Sharon Moore, who elevates to head coach. I have got a lot of respect for that guy. And I've got immense respect for the Michigan culture and their way of doing things, and you can make whatever comments you want to about last year off the field. I got immense respect for the way that program goes about its business. It's never needed to be a top 3 recruiting program. It'd be nice if they were, but they've never had to be that. So the intangibles of what makes Michigan football are not going anywhere. And if people are counting on that to just fade away because there was a coaching change, I think those people will be a little disappointed. But there's enough unknown around the program that even I have to admit, you got to back off on them a little bit. It's just tough to place them right now. You need proof of product. You know, it could be that halfway into this season, Michigan is playing at a high level, and the first thing out of our mouths is, wow, they haven't skipped a beat. Saban to DeBoer was a big deal in Tuscaloosa, but it looks like Harbaugh to Moore has been a seamless handoff as well. Could be the case. And if it's the case, I'd be happy to be wrong and bump them up a few spots. Michigan football means something to me, though. Not just where they are located, not just what they did last year, what it stands for. And there is an immense amount of pride that will be taken up there in the handing off of the baton, it being taken, and it being carried the way it should. You know, that's why I probably don't sleep a lot, that staff right now, because there's immense pressure in wearing that Block M on your chest as the head man. If you're Sharon Moore, dude, that means a lot. That program means a lot. What Michigan is means a lot. That's not fading away. That's still a top 10 caliber program over the next 3 years to me. I'm going to get hate mail, even if you want to write a physical letter to me, but I'm going to get hate responses and replies for this one. That's okay, though. That's okay. I'll be happy to revisit the receipts on this one. If you're listening on podcast and you can't see the screen right now, here's what I'm doing. I think Texas A&M is going to be a top 10 college football program in the coming 3 years because I have maximum belief in Mike Elko, purely looking forward, not what they have been. They've been the biggest underachiever in America for a long time. They've always had the capability to be a major program. I believe that. Some of you disagree. Elko will prove me right on that. He's a top-level tactician. On the field, no question. Game day, no question. But what he did at Duke is he showed the ability to evaluate and develop talent at a high level, and all I'm doing is I'm taking that and I'm dropping it into a bucket with some of the deepest pockets and most endless resources imaginable in college athletics. He won't lose those abilities. That staff won't lose that ability. What they'll do is they'll just put rocket boosters onto what they already are and what he already is. I just add elite resources to it. The hire went under the radar because of the Bama change. Hardly anyone paid attention to what Texas A&M did. They will notice it. They will notice it because he is not having to start from scratch there. In fact, I would argue it may be one of the more enviable arrivals that we've seen in major coaching changes in quite some time. Because Jimbo didn't leave the cupboard bare. Jimbo just didn't fully know what to do with all the ingredients once he had gone and gotten them at the store. Mike Elko does. Mike Elko could win with less than Texas A&M has and will have moving forward, but he won't have to settle for that because they will have everything that they need. I think what you'll come to know Texas A&M as under Mike Elko is a program that recruits really good to potentially great, but then they never get out-coached. They never have guys that fall through the cracks. They're always at a maximum of development. Most of their guys pan out, and you'll look and you'll say, wow, there is not a lot of fat left on the bone with that program. They get every ounce out of it. That'll be Mike Elko. That's how you'll describe him at A&M. Moving forward, there are a couple of programs conspicuous in their absence right now. I know because I'm looking at the live chat. Some of you have already noticed whomst I'm talking about. I put LSU as the number 11 program in America over the next 3 years. Very intentional with this. Brian Kelly, I got no doubt about him. Well-established, ton of accolades, all deserved. We are not an anti-Brian Kelly show. We're a pro-Brian Kelly show. The staff moves on defense were elite. Most upgraded defensive staff in America, to me, is LSU. And while that may not pay off in a top 10 unit this year, it will pay off moving forward if he keeps those guys there. So the moves they made were great. The portal moves they made were not, and that's one mild concern I have moving forward. But recruiting overall is very good, and it will continue to be. Bryce Underwood, as long as something terrible doesn't happen, will sign with LSU and they'll have the number one quarterback in the country over the coming 3 seasons. I think internal alignment could be better within the program, and that is a multi-layered statement that I don't care to dive into any further, but I think the local beat down there could do a much better job than me at explaining that. I think there are enough questions about this season and what it could mean over the coming years that while I still believe in everything that is LSU, and I've seen them win titles with the last several coaches that have been down there, there's enough wobble in the tire there for me to have them down at a number 11 spot instead of a little bit higher. I'm staying in the SEC for number 12, not because of homerism, but because these are where most of the best teams are. And if I were from Spokane, Washington, I'd probably say the same thing. Tennessee, my number 12 program for the next 3 years in college football. I saw someone hating on this earlier today. Like, why would Tennessee not be there is my follow-up question. Josh Heupel plus a top-level quarterback. What does that mean? 2 years ago, it meant they had the number one offense in the country. Nico Iamaleava is going to be there for a majority, at least, of the next 3 seasons. They made sneaky good portal moves this past season, and I think they'll continue to do that. They're a big player in NIL. They're in a number of the big recruitments out there. They're not far away now. Like, they got that signature win a couple of years ago against Bama, but as a program, I still don't think they've really arrived at the head table, but they're not that far away. The 12-team playoff era for Tennessee will be about as beneficial as any program in the SEC because they're going to be the kind of program with the head coach they have and the offense they run that has the ability to get red hot in November. Doesn't matter if they have 2 or 3 losses. That's the one you'll find yourself saying you don't want to play. That's the one that'll be the hot team down the stretch. That quarterback, don't want to run into him in the playoff. That's the caliber that Tennessee could be at the low end. At the high end, they don't need to be talked about like that. You may just flat out find yourself talking about him as a national championship contender wire to wire. They have that high-end ability. There are some areas they take a back seat to. In other words, they're not quite elite in all the categories that maybe a Georgia is, but they're plenty close enough to where their best shot is enough to take you down. Tennessee at number 11 or 12. Tennessee at number 12. Number 13. This will go over well. I've got Miami as the number 13 program in college football over the next 3 years. Ultra aggressive in talent acquisition. They've got an ultra-aggressive staff down there. I think it much more blends with what the culture of the Miami program should be than maybe some previous staffs. They've already been trending up. So year 1 to year 2, the record improved. Year 2 to year 3, I expect it to improve again. They're 1 pop year away. That's all it'll take. Mark my words. If they win double-digit games this year, if they win the ACC, if they're in the playoff, if Cam Ward, that big acquisition out of the portal, if he blows up this year, he's the best quarterback in the ACC, that'll be it. That'll be it. They've been selling vision down there. That's what they've been selling. In the portal and recruiting, that's what they've been selling. It's been plenty good enough. They've got really deep pockets. They've got really good resources. They are extremely aggressive in talent acquisition. The big question is, can you get it done once you got the guys on campus? And that is a remains-to-be-seen proposition today. But they're going to get it done. And when they do, all of a sudden that's not a question anymore. And all of a sudden it's selling guys, hey, come continue to be a part of this. It no longer is it, come here so maybe we can do this one day. College football and what Miami means in college football could sound much different 3 years from now than it does today. Today, folks can still take their shots. There may be a day not too far down the road where you don't get to take those shots anymore. So I've got Miami at number 13. That's what having a lot of really good players on campus does. You can have all the other questions you want to. If you got the horses on Saturdays, you got a shot. Number 14, this was the toughest one. So Michigan was the second toughest one. I think this is the toughest one. I put Clemson as the number 14 program in college football over the next 3 years. Toughest program to place to me because I have insane amounts of respect for the culture there. I don't want to just gloss over that. Clemson has a unique culture unto any other program in college football. They've done it a certain way, unlike most any other program in college football. Same guy's been there. Dabo's been there the entire time. High-level coaching staff there. Love some of the moves they just made this past summer and past spring to get guys on campus. They are a 10 to 15 caliber recruiter. That's where their recruiting classes have been landing, in the 10 to 15 range. When you're in that range and you voluntarily neglect the transfer portal, it is tough for me to put you as a program projecting you over the next 3 years above programs that take advantage of all the mechanisms at their disposal. When it's this bunched, and the 5 to 15 range over the next 3 years to me is very bunched, it's very clogged up, and everyone else is taking advantage of the portal and you're choosing not to, that's how you land at 14. And they got a bunch of big games this season. They got an early hinge game against Georgia, Florida State, NC State. So we'll know a lot, to me, about this particular placement of Clemson over the next 3 years just in the first month and a half of this season. Clemson at number 14. That was a tough one for me. Number 15, got Penn State at number 15 of the next 3 seasons, college football program rankings. There's just a ton of B to B plus with Penn State. Good, solid program. They are a top 15 staff. I think they're a top 15 recruiting program. They are a top 5 to 15 team in any given year. That's enough to place them at number 15. Big question is there anything that's going to fundamentally change? Is there a noticeable uptick coming for Penn State football over the next 3 years that would warrant me putting them higher than anywhere in the 10 to 15 range? This could just as easily have been number 10 as number 15. That's how tightly bunched I think a lot of the teams are. Is the new offensive coordinator, Andy Koltnicki, is that going to be enough to elevate their explosive play rate, thus giving them a shot in big games against Ohio State and Michigan and the like? Because if the answer is yes, they ought to be higher than 15. There's no slam dunk evidence that's going to happen. So for now, they hold down the 15 spot with a full understanding in the room that there's not a big gap between number 7 and number 15. So Penn State at number 15. Okay, so that's the full top 15. Now, Caleb's asking, where is Missouri? Missouri probably in the 15 to 20 range. I'd ask you this, Caleb. I very rarely do this with the live chat, but I just asked this. All right, so let's take a look at the combination of what I talked about. Let's take a look at on-field performance over the next 3 years. Let's take a look at talent acquisition numbers over the next 3 years. Let's take a look at resource pool, and let's take a look at program synergy and culture. Does Missouri have a better blend over a rolling 3-year average coming up, 24, 25, 26, than one of those 15 do? If you believe that, then they should be in your top 15. I couldn't put Missouri in over anyone in the top 15. Not to say it's not competitive. Missouri probably places in the 15 to 20 range for me. And by the way, that's really good because I'll tell you what that means. That means on the field, Missouri could they could be 8th this upcoming year, and then 22nd, and then 14th. And that would land them, 16 or 17 on average? So that would be really good. That's exactly where they should be. Like, if Penn State's 15 right now, that doesn't mean they couldn't have a season next year where they're the number 4 team in the country and have a first-round bye in the playoff. It's a rolling 3-year average. That's how that works. So I will look forward to seeing where you guys land on this. Top 15 programs over the next 3 years.